Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Sunday. Welcome to another fantastic Cook Along Live. Today we're going to be doing a pretty difficult dish. It's actually a dish that I did a couple of times, long time ago. This is something from Gordon Ramsay, of course. This is his tortellini of ratatouille with a gazpacho sauce, and I've actually got the book that I got the recipe out of right out here, just in case I need to reference it, because this is a little bit of a difficult cook along. It's going to be a lot of fun though. So I hope you guys stick with me. I hope you guys have all your ingredients prepped and ready to go, because when I say it's difficult, I don't mean that it's hard. Like, there's nothing in this that is any different than anything that we've done before, but we just have to do a lot of different things and then bring them all together at the end. So we're going to be going step by step. This is probably going to be one of the longer cook along lives that we do. So just keep that in mind. And what we're going to start with is we're going to start with making our pasta dough. So that needs to actually be put together first and put into the fridge to kind of rest for a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And let me see if we can do that. So I've got a little bit of a different angle here for you. And this way you guys can kind of take a look at the actual pasta dough that I'm working on right here on the counter a little bit closer than the overhead cam. And I apologize for the washed out view on that, but there's not really much I can do about that. So let's go ahead and get started. We have about 550 grams of just regular all-purpose flour. Hopefully, let's see if we... There we go. Now you guys can see top down and right where we're going. So regular all-purpose flour, 550 grams. You can use double O flour if that's what you have, but this is what I'm using. We're going to go ahead and sift it through. And what this will do is basically remove any lumps in the flour and make it a little bit smoother. So all you have to do is tap on the side of this. And we'll get our flour sifted. This is going to make 2 servings of pasta dough, essentially. So we'll be able to take this, split it in half, and then use half of it for tonight and half of it for later in the week, if that's something that you are interested in. It should only take a second. There we go. Get some nice and light flour. If there's any little lumps, you can just kind of pop them into the trash, and we'll set that over to the side. Now I've got a good pinch of flour here, which is also going to get incorporated into, good pinch of salt that's going to get incorporated into the flour. And while we're doing this, we want to make our little well in the middle. Now we've done homemade pasta dough before, so this is very similar to what we did the last time. And the reason I didn't sift the salt is because it would actually get caught up in the little strainer that I've got over there, the little wire mesh strainer. So what we want to do is we want to put in 4 whole eggs, and we want to put in 6 egg yolks. Now, getting egg yolks is not the easiest thing to do, but I'm going to show you a real quick trick, and I'm just going to reuse this flour bowl over here. And for our egg yolks, we're just going to crack our eggs into the bowl, all 6 of them. Be gentle so you don't break any of the eggs yolks. Like so. If you want, you can make a half measurement of this. So it would be 275 grams of flour and 2 whole eggs and 3 egg yolks. I did give that a try earlier this week, and it turned out a little dry. I actually had to add a little bit. I had to add an extra egg. So keep in mind that if you're not using this exact recipe, it might come out a little bit different. Now for the egg yolks, they're all put in here in this bowl. All we have to do is kind of go fish them out with our hands. So just go grab one. Just be gentle so you don't break it, and just let the white kind of roll through your fingers. 1 egg yolk. Same with number 2. 2 egg yolks. If you get a little extra white in there, it's not too big of a deal. Why we want egg yolks versus the entire egg is more to color the pasta so that it has that trademark yellow pasta color. If you wanted to have an extra egg or two, that would be fine. Just don't put in as many yolks. Hey, Mark. I am folding my own tortellini, absolutely. I have smaller hands, but you can actually size these however you want, and we'll get into that once we get that far. I'm just going to go ahead and toss these. We'll put our full eggs in now. And I'm doing this on a very clean countertop. You can absolutely do this on a cutting board. I'm lucky enough that I have a nice granite countertop here that I can use. And I'm going to go ahead and switch over to our sink cam real quick. I'm just going to basically pour out the egg whites and give myself a little bit of a hand wash. They're going to get dirty again, but while I'm touching stuff, might as well keep them as clean as I can keep them. So, like I said, this is not a really difficult thing to make. It just takes a lot of time. Everything that we're doing right now, you can absolutely do a day in advance and then get these ready and then actually assemble them and put them together and cook them the day of. This is going to be kind of something that you would want to do for a special event. If you have that, special someone coming over, or if you are just kind of throwing a small party and want to have something fun, great for holidays. Great for the holidays. But since Halloween is this weekend, I wanted to do something a little bit scary, and this is definitely scary for me. So hopefully I will make it so that it's not as scary for y'all. And you guys will give it a shot for sure. That back. Cool. So we're back. What we want to do is we want to grab a fork. Small fork is what I'm using, and I'm also going to grab my pasta scraper. And we're going to go ahead and essentially whisk the eggs in this little bowl that we've created. And if we pull in a little bit of flour, that's fine. You do want to thicken this up. And you do essentially want to scramble the eggs in here. Make sure that you build your walls big enough that they will contain the eggs. And you might notice that I've got more flour on this side than I do on this side. So I'm going to start doing is kind of scraping flour to kind of even it up as I mix this all together. You can absolutely use a food processor if you want to do this step. I actually don't like cleaning the food processor, so I would rather just kind of scrape things off of my countertop. It just is easier for me. Seems to keep things a little bit cleaner. Plus, this gives you a nice connection to the food that you're making. Being able to whip up fresh pasta dough is pretty impressive. And we're just basically very, very slowly incorporating a little bit of flour every time we kind of go around, mixing it into the center. And then if any extra kind of gets folded in, that's fine. What we want to do is basically get the egg to be not watery, not liquidy like this. It's going to thicken up as we kind of fold the flour in. And then once it gets to a point where it's not going to be running all over the countertop, we'll start using our dough scraper to kind of cut the rest of the flour in. Get a little bit more flour here. And you'll notice that your pile of flour, or your dough here, is going to kind of spread out as you go around. So just make sure you have a little bit of space on either side for it to kind of expand. Don't worry too much if you got a little bit of lumps. That's not a huge problem. We're going to let this rest in the fridge while we continue with the rest of our the filling and the olive tapenade and all of that. And that'll kind of even out the moisture and kind of smooth out the lumps. Turkish restaurant on Sunday. Ooh, I love that. That sounds amazing, Mark. Where are you at, and what's the name of that restaurant? If you're anywhere near me, I might go try it out. If you're nowhere near me, maybe if I come visit your area, I'll see if I can scope that restaurant out and give it a shot. That sounds delicious. So you'll notice my egg mixture here in the middle is getting a lot thicker. And this is perfect. Now again, I mentioned that you can do this a day in advance. The dough is one of the more time-consuming bits, so this is definitely something that I would recommend if you are planning on doing this. Make a batch of this the day before, the night before, and then you'll be more ready for the rest of it the next day. This is also a recipe I highly recommend you get all of your ingredients prepped and ready before you start, just because otherwise you waste a lot of time task switching, like leaving one task to go and get something else ready and done and stuff like that, and then having to get back on task to kind of figure out where you were. It makes it a little bit less efficient. And that actually makes this seem a lot more difficult than it is. The first couple of times I did this, I was just kind of going off the cuff, running back to the fridge, grabbing what I needed, and it didn't work super well. Took quite a while to put this together. All right, cool. So our egg mixture is very much coming together here. I'm gonna go ahead and just use my dough scraper to get some of that off. I'm gonna set my fork off to the side, and then I'm literally just gonna start kind of cutting the flour in. Pick up flour onto your dough scraper first because it gives it a little bit of a buffer so that while you're mixing this in, your dough is not going to stick to it. And they have plastic scrapers, they have metal scrapers. I like the metal one, but if you have a plastic one, that's all good. Go ahead and use that. And then while I'm doing this, let's see one thing. Will that fix my white balance? Camera. There we go. That looks a little bit better. So go ahead and for sure scrape everything off of your countertop and into the flour. And then you can start using one of your hands to kind of bring things together. Now if your dough is coming together and looks a little bit dry, you got to give it some time because the moisture takes a bit to kind of distribute through the flour. So this looks super, super dry. But as we knead it together, as we kind of cut it together and get some of this kneading going, it should start smoothing out. If it doesn't, feel free to add another egg yolk or another egg. But definitely err on the side of giving this more time with kneading before you start doing that. You'll notice that this is now becoming a shaggy dough, and it's not super powdery anymore, so the moisture is being distributed. Now I'm literally just lifting on one side, putting it in, cutting it. That's all I'm doing. And then using my left hand to kind of keep everything on the counter and in the space that I want it. Also kind of using the flat end to smash it down on itself. So we're getting a little bit of a knead in. Cool. We'll start using our hands. We're just going to squish it together with our basically making fists in it. You'll notice that it is sticking to you, which is great. That means that there's plenty of moisture. Now what we're going to want to do is basically lift and then push down. Lift, push down. Lift all of the loose bits, push them down. And that's what we're going to do here to make our dough. And as we knead it, a lot of the extra flour, the powder, is going to kind of get incorporated into this dough. It's going to soften it. It's going to absorb some of the moisture. And as you keep mixing it and kneading it, you're going to notice that it's going to get wet again, and then it's going to dry off a little bit. And that's just kind of the evolution of this dough. Mine might be a little bit dry, so I might add an extra egg yolk, but we'll see. Definitely a little bit dry. So what I'm going to do is basically make a little bit of a hole like that. Basin, I guess, is one way to put it. I'm going to grab another egg. And let's see, do I want to do a yolk or do I want to do an egg? I think I'll add the whole egg. Famous last words. There we go. And now what I'm going to do is just kind of cut the egg into the dough. Again, using the pasta scraper. And this is going to take a little while to incorporate, so just be patient with it. You may also want to go and get a little bit of flour, not to put on the dough necessarily, but to get on your hands, because when you add moisture to the dough is going to want to stick to everything. But I'm going to chance it first and see what happens. You'll notice how quickly this dough is now picking up all the flour from the countertop, because it is well hydrated and it's looking for more things to absorb that moisture. So we're just going to go ahead and roll it around, pick up all the little bits, and then just keep kneading. And you'll notice that all I'm doing is picking it up, turning it basically a quarter turn, and then putting the heel of my hand into it. And what we're doing is incorporating the moisture from the egg, as well as kind of smoothing out the lumps. And this is definitely tacky. But it's not super sticking to my hands, so I think it's okay. Might need just a little bit more flour. Oof. Cool, man. I was not in the service. I got my private pilot's license after a particularly rough spot in my life. Decided that was a great way to get some therapy, and had been flying simulators for about 20 years before that, and figured it was time for me to actually go get my private. I had been meaning to for a while and was finally in a financial spot where I was able to justify it. And so that's when I got my license about 3 years ago. 3 years ago? 4 years ago at this point, I started training. And so I got my license May of the following year, right before my birthday, and immediately flew up to McCall, Idaho to watch the eclipse that was happening, that solar eclipse that we had. Cool. So you'll notice that now the dough has come together quite a bit better. Still a little bit tough, but that's fine. This is going to get rested, and it should smooth out quite a bit. You'll notice that really all I'm doing is just making sure that I'm picking it up and then just using the heels of my hand to knead it back down onto itself. And giving it a little bit of a turn, and then repeating the process. And the tenderloin, awesome. I can definitely make it over there. I absolutely do. Not necessarily, well, yeah, I guess I do fly over it every so often. I like to go up the coast and kind of see Golden Gate Park, you know, from the ocean side. And then it's kind of my standard bay tour for friends, family. Fly over Half Moon Bay, go up the coast, see the Golden Gate, and then head over Alcatraz. A lot of fun. Cool. Our pasta dough has come together nicely. You just never give up on it. Keep kneading, keep adding a little bit of water if you need to. And as long as it's not like glooping on your hands, you shouldn't need to add any moisture. Any more flour. If it really starts sticking and you're getting like, you know, globs of flour on your hands, that's when you might want to add a little bit more flour to kind of absorb some of that moisture. And honestly, when you're making dough, most of the ingredient recommendations are pretty close, but they're kind of a guide, because I think what's happening is my scale is not being as accurate as it needs to be. Anyway, we have a nice large piece of dough. I'm going to roll this into a little bit of a ball, like so. I'm going to grab some cling film. We're going to wrap it up. We're going to toss it in the fridge to rest for at least 30 minutes. Might be longer based on everything else that we have to do. And then we'll get set up for the rest of this. Always wrap it in cling film because the outside of this dough is going to dry out real quick. And you don't want that. You don't want that little film to form on the outside. There we go, right in the middle. We're going to make this nice and tight. So, and step away for just a second. Grab my kitchen shears and just make sure you got full coverage over the dough. And I often like to kind of gather it up into one little pinch spot like so. So I can kind of squeeze the air out along the sides up to this pinch point. And then I can make it nice and tight by spinning it a couple times. So there we go. Pasta dough ready to rest. When we pull this out, we're actually going to notice that the amount of moisture that gets distributed through the dough as it rests becomes more even. It's going to become almost a different animal. It's going to become very pliable. It should be very soft, and it should be holding its shape but springing back slightly. So I don't know if you guys can see that in the camera, but if I push down, you'll notice the dimple does come back up, but it doesn't spring back very quickly. So into the fridge. Awesome, awesome. Back over to the sink cam. Get some of this dough off my hands. And whew, that's always a workout. Let me tell you. I love making fresh dough, but sometimes it shows you how out of shape you actually are. And then to get the dough off my hands, it is kind of sticky. I'm using my nails to kind of scrape it, and then basically letting it run down that way. Awesome, awesome. And now step 2, we're going to start making the ratatouille, which is going to be our filling. And also we're going to make a tomato concasse, which is really just skinned tomatoes that we get to dice. And getting the skins off is pretty simple. So actually, while we're waiting, I'm going to get my water boiling. I've got a really cool little induction kettle here that will come up to the boil real quick and then hold that temperature. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill this up with enough water to cover 2 tomatoes. And then I'm going to get that boiling. So if you have a kettle, that'll work just as well. Get some water in the kettle. About 500 milliliters should be good. We're going to go ahead and set that on its base and bring it to the boil and tell it to hold temperature. I'll close some of these things up. Back to the cooking. All right, we're back. Let's switch to this one. Now we can kind of focus on some of our other stuff. Now, I've got a little bit of dough kind of left here and it's a little bit sticky. So what I'm going to do is take a quick second. And unfortunately, a couple paper towels. I like using cloth when I can, but for cleaning, paper is quicker and easier. I'm going to go ahead and get the majority of this dough off into the garbage. And then I'm going to use my scraper just to give it a once over. And this will pretty much get anything that's kind of stuck to the countertop. And we got a nice clean countertop. Toss the dough scraper into the sink. And we'll get our cutting board all squared away. So I got this awesome mat. If you don't have a mat like this, I highly recommend. Makes it so that you're not getting water all over the bottom of your cutting board and keeps your cutting board from sliding around on you. There we go. Ready, ready, ready. Double check, pasta dough done. Ratatouille and the concasse. So let's start with our ratatouille. Let me move this over to the side. You basically need one of each. 1 red bell pepper, 1 eggplant of some kind. I like using the Japanese eggplants or the Chinese eggplants, the longer skinny ones, and 1 zucchini. So basically courgette, aubergine, and red bell pepper. Now, You're supposed to get about 85 grams of each. I usually just do 1 and 1. So I'll try and get these to be about the same size so that I get the same amount out. And then the red bell pepper, same thing. When I kind of start cutting this down, I should have the same amount of red bell pepper as I do from each one of these as well. And if you just do 1, 1, 1, it's a lot easier than trying to measure everything out. So I'm just going to chop off the bottoms, chop off about the same amount for each. I always have the option to use the rest of this if I need to, but I'm going to set it aside for now. And we're going to start with our red bell pepper. Now, these things are really, really fun to break down and actually turn into a delicious dish. I'm basically going to just cut the bottom. So I'm going to find the shortest end here. I'm going to cut just straight down so I have a nice flat base. I set that over on the side just in case I need to, or need it for something in the future. So I've got my pepper. I'm going to set it down on the flat base. I'm going to cut straight down from the top, like so. Now all I'm going to do is take my knife and cut straight, cut around, and then literally just unroll the pepper as I have the knife flat on the cutting board. And this will avoid all of the seeds on the bell pepper and give you just the flesh. If you really want to, you can come back and kind of cut some of this waste up at the top, but you don't need to. I might take some of this bottom off because that's a good bit of red bell pepper, and maybe some of this. But you'll notice all of the white, all of the pith, all of the seeds are still on the bell pepper. I can use this for a stock or throw it in my compost pile, and I'm good to go. Cool, cool. Now, as for this, what I'm going to do is actually section it off into little flats, basically. So I can probably keep that bit flat without it splitting. I can keep that bit flat without it splitting. I'm just going to set those aside. And then I'm going to start with these small bits. We want these to be very, very tiny. We want these to be cut down quite a bit. And yes, there is garlic, no onion in this. You can add it if you want, totally up to you. This is just going to be kind of the ratatouille base, is just these 3 things. And now that you mentioned it, let me double check. Yes, no garlic and onion here, but there is in other things, so we will be getting to that. We want these to be cut down pretty fine. This is going into a tortellini, so you want the filling to be nice and small so that it fits. The best way to do that is basically to come and just kind of cut your red bell pepper very, very thin. You'll notice the way that I'm holding the red bell pepper. I curl my fingers backwards like this. And then when your fingers are curled, if you use the base of your knuckle as a guide, it's very, very difficult to cut yourself unless you have some kind of a mishap and like the knife goes flying, which I've never had that happen to me. And then you can very, very finely control, just by moving your hand back, how thin you want everything to be cut. Now, the size of your hand does make a difference here. If you have a larger hand, you're able to kind of hold more of this vegetable together. But you'll notice that you can get a very fine dice doing that. And I'm going to be doing that with the rest of the red bell pepper. If you think your red bell pepper is a little bit too thick, you can go through and cut it in half. Honestly, this is going to cook down as well, so I don't think you have to worry too much about that. More important just to make sure that it's thin this way, and then thin on the cross cut as well. And then you'll notice my thumb usually tends to go behind my fingers, so you're not going to nick it, and it'll usually go to the back of whatever I'm holding and kind of brace it as I move my fingers backwards slowly. There we are. And these don't have to be like microscopic, but you do want them to just be smaller. Go ahead and do the same thing this way. Always keep your thumb behind, even if it doesn't have a ledge to kind of grab on. Just make sure that it's behind your knuckles so that you don't cut yourself. And we'll get this down as fine as we can get it. And don't rush this. This does take time. Just realize it's going to take you a little bit of time, especially if you don't have awesome knife skills. And just take your time doing it. And there we go. And next. Go ahead and finish cutting our red bell pepper. I was thinking about getting this all done in advance, and then I thought that this was actually a really good teaching point to talk about proper knife skills and just going slow and making sure that everything comes out the way you want it to. Some of these guys are a little bit thicker, so I'm actually going to just kind of cut them across like so as well, but the majority of them are good. And we'll just do our cross cut. Same thing. I mean, it's absolutely not to say that I've never cut myself. I've absolutely cut myself, but not when I'm doing everything properly. I've never cut myself doing things properly. Usually it's when I'm getting fancy and not paying attention. That's when I end up cutting myself. So the cool thing about this as well is you can absolutely still cut things and not have to actually look at what you're cutting, because you know how much you're moving your hands backwards. And so you can kind of take an eye off of this, maybe encourage your animals to not be up on tables and things like that. Or if you're hosting a cook-along, to keep a conversation going with your audience. And you'll notice that when I'm cutting this way, I'm actually just rocking the knife up and down and moving it just ever so slightly back. I keep the tip of the knife down unless I'm doing like long cuts. It gives you a lot more control that way. There we go. Red bell pepper is taken care of. Now we're going to do the eggplant or the aubergine, depending on what part of the world you're in. They might be called different things. I'm basically just going to cut a flat part out so that I can set it flat. And I'm going to go ahead and get this diced to go off. Mark, I don't think I have any red wine. I think I do have some leftover red wine from the rest of the weekend. Leftover white wine, I'm sorry, from earlier in the weekend. So I guess I can do that. Since we're doing pasta, white wine, I guess that works. Thank you for reminding me. Sometimes I forget to properly hydrate during these. So excellent, excellent reminder. There we go. Nice Chardonnay. Mm-hmm. Yum. Thank you for the reminder. And then we've got this small piece. I'm going to go ahead and get it cut immediately. And the reason that I'm cutting this is because if you have a rounded edge, you have a rounded surface, it's not going to sit flat on a cutting board. Like if we were trying to cut this and we were using the rounded edge, you'll notice that it like wants to rock around. There's the chance that as you're cutting things, it won't be stable. But if you turn it over on its flat side, it's not going anywhere. You can cut through it very quickly. So that's why we're doing it this way. And I'm basically just going to be cutting long strips. And right after I said that, I put it on its rounded side. I'm a terrible influence on everything. And again, I'm just going to take my time with this and cut the long strips. Cut them fairly thin. But I'm not worried too much about that, as long as they're small. And similarly sized to the red bell pepper, they'll be good. I'll go ahead and turn it horizontal and just give it a real quick cut through. We're going to be sauteing all of these veggies at the same time. So I'm just going to keep piling them up in one pile here on the cutting board. If I were going to put them into, like in different stages, for example, if I was starting with onions and then adding garlic after that and then getting everything else in, I would have them in different piles so that I could control the timing. But since these are all going in at the same time, we're just going to go ahead and stack them on top of each other. It'll also give me a pretty good idea of how big the piles of all of the chopped up veggies are. And I can see if I need to use like less red bell pepper or something like that. So we got our awesome eggplant here. Gonna lay it flat. We're gonna take our knife. We're gonna go flat like this. We're gonna put our hand on top of the eggplant. I'm gonna move it back just so that you guys can see it from the top. And I'm gonna come down to about 1/8 of an inch and just cut horizontally like so. Set this aside. And I'm going to do that all the way up the eggplant. This is how you dice eggplants. This is how you dice zucchini. This is how you dice cucumbers, anything that is long like this, carrots work. This is the best way I've found to get them nice and diced. And you'll notice that now I'm kind of using just the tips of my fingers to hold it down from the top. But I'm making sure that my fingers are on the top and I'm not gripping it from the outside because I don't want to cut myself. This is all about knife safety, speed, efficiency, and skill. And you do have to build up the speed. I am not fast by any means, but the speed that I've built up has been over several years of cooking. And then that's about as good as I'm gonna get. I've got this little piece right here. I'm gonna go ahead and do what we did with the first piece and just cut this into long strips. And then dice it down. Now this is gonna create enough tortellini for 4 people. And then I would just double up if you are doing 8, right? So 2 of each vegetable if you're cooking for 8, 3 if you're cooking for 12, and on and on. There we go. And then what I'll do is I'll arrange them vertically. And then I'll just cut straight down. And I will use my fingers on the outside to kind of keep things together as best I can. And then just get these down to nice thin strips. If they fall over, it's okay, as long as they remain straight, kind of in this direction. Like so. And part of the reason I like these Japanese or Chinese eggplants is because the seeds are super small, so you can just cut them in and saute them along with everything else. You don't have to worry about them. There we go. Turn it 90 degrees, and we will start our fine dice this way. Now this pile is quite a bit higher than the red pepper, so I'm actually picking up the knife and just purposefully going through and making sure that I'm moving it back just a little bit each time, keeping it up against my knuckle. And there we go, nice pile of eggplant, nice pile of red bell pepper, and they're close enough in size that I think I'm okay. Now we'll move on to our zucchini. We're going to do the exact same thing. Sometimes these guys have like a curved side. You have this end curves, it's not totally straight. You guys can probably see through the knife there. I'm actually going to cut that side down first. Like so. And just keep it super thin. And what I'm going to do is shift this all over. And do the same thing that we did with the eggplant. And I'm just going to go quick on this. I've already done it once as a demo. So I'm just going to speed through it for the zucchini. When I'm making tabbouleh or something, if I'm cutting up an onion, this is how or not an onion, a cucumber, this is how I do it. A lot of people ask me how I cut my tabbouleh so fine, and this is the secret. Just figuring out how to get the finest dice out of whatever vegetable you are cutting. And then as it gets thinner and thinner, sometimes you might have just noticed me do it. I'll move my hand from the back to the opposite side of the knife, and then I'll just pull the knife through. That way I don't have any chance of cutting myself. There we go. I'll just do the same thing here, vertical cuts. Nice and thin. Yikes. As thin as we can get them. Awesome. 90 degrees, and this pile is even taller than the eggplant because zucchini is a little bit more robust, doesn't quite squish down as easy. So I'm just going to do the same thing. Just lift the knife, move it back just ever so slightly, and cut through. I would not recommend using a food processor to dice these things down, and the reason being, those tend to kind of chop things up into, like, pulverize them and not really let them maintain their shape, and you'll end up getting like a gel as opposed to individual little cubed pieces. It's also why I don't make my salsa with a food processor. I hand cut that. Go. This bad boy, like so. Come on, buddy. Long strips. A couple of stowaways there. We'll just get cut through this and we'll be done with this. We can start with our tomatoes. There we go. Nice diced veggies. I'm going to leave those guys on the side. I might actually cut this down just a bit to give me a little bit more red bell pepper. And we'll get our pan going. Perfect. All that's good to go. Go ahead and get this ready. We're going to be using a couple of devices as well. We do have a food processor. We're also using a blender for things like our tapenade, olive tapenade. So we will be using multiple things. Just going to grab my pan. And get this going. Just medium-high heat, don't need anything crazy. Put in about a glug of olive oil. I like to think of it about as a tablespoon, but I also want to just make sure that all of my veggies aren't going to stick. Hey, Caspero, how's it going, man? Thanks, Mark. Thank you, thank you. Strange dreams sometimes relays cutting zucchini. Oh yeah, I do that all the time. I have probably made Polish food, but you would have to give me a couple of ideas of what it would be, because I make a lot of different kinds of food, so I might not know exactly what was Polish or not. I just make things that I enjoy eating, or things that sound good, so I'm sure that I've made Polish food in the past. Ratatouille is essentially just the zucchini. It's like a basically supposed to be a vegetable stew, like a cheap vegetable stew, and it starts with very big chunks of zucchini, eggplant, bell pepper, and tomatoes. We haven't gotten to our tomatoes yet, but those are going to be the next step. While we get this sautéing, we're actually going to start getting our tomato concasse going, and let's go ahead and get that started. I'm just going to cut off the stem sides. I just want to get rid of the stem on both of these tomatoes, and I'm using Roma tomatoes. They have a little bit more flavor is why. And then I'm also going to just kind of nick these on the top. Just give a little bit of a cross. Like so. And like so. I can smell my oil getting warm. Definitely feeling warm. I'm going to go ahead and get this into the pan. And there's a healthy little sizzle. We're going to go ahead and get this sautéing. Again, you just want this on medium-high heat. You don't want this on super high because you don't necessarily want to color your veggies. We're just cooking them down to get them nice and soft. Grab all of the rest with our knife. And we'll move back to our tomatoes. There we go. Last little bit. Cool. So our tomatoes, we're going to put into, where did my bowl go that I had my flour in? Let me find it. Aha. We're just going to put these into a bowl, like so. And like I mentioned, we had our boiling water going over here, so that has beeped at me to let me know that it's done boiling. I'm just going to pour it right over the tomatoes. And what this is going to do is release the skin from the outsides of the tomatoes. It's not going to cook the tomatoes. We're not keeping the water boiling. We're just using it to remove the skins off the tomatoes. There we go. Those are nice and covered. We're going to leave them for about 2 minutes. And then the skins on those guys are just going to come right off. I'm just going to set them aside. And we'll wait for 2 minutes while I take a sip of wine. So while we're waiting for those to kind of get undressed, as it were, I'm going to come over here and start stirring our ratatouille filling. Now this in and of itself is not ratatouille. This is some of the components. The tomato is part of the other components. I'm not sure if you can see, but the skins are literally just peeling off of the edges of the tomato, which is what we want. But these are going to be combined with the tomatoes once we finish them off. We're going to cut them into a nice dice without their seeds. That, with some basil, is essentially ratatouille. Now, traditionally, it's not made this fine. It's usually nice chunky bits of vegetable, so you get a really, really hearty dish with a really yummy tomato sauce that goes along with it. And I do have ratatouille on my Cook Along Live channel, so if you want to jump over to YouTube and take a look at the recordings I have on the playlist for Cook Along Live, you'll be able to see that I've done ratatouille, and I did it Disney style even. So I did the really cool, like super thinly sliced rounds, and then turned that into almost like a casserole. That was a lot of fun to make, and I used the Chef Steps recipe. So if you know who Chef Steps are, they have a lot of modernist cooking kind of stuff in there. And so I used their methods to put that together. Came out perfect. This is just a different take on it, and we're putting it into tortellini, so we need to dice it down really, really small. I'm going to give it a good amount of seasoning. Good pinch of salt. Good amount of black pepper here. And then you just basically want to make sure that it's not sticking to the bottom of the pan. If it starts sticking, you're going to want to add a little bit more oil. You don't need too much. But you don't want brownie bits on your ratatouille. Look at how vibrant those veggies look. And there we go. And for those of you who found me from my cooking or from my flying stuff, yes, flying and food are like my two big passions in life. So when the pandemic happened and we weren't able to go anywhere, I went from one to the other. I have a lot of friends and family who really enjoy it when I cook, so I figured I would cook for them in a virtual sense and they could join along with me, which is why this is called Cook Along Live. All right, we're done with our water. We're letting these guys cook down a bit, and you'll notice that the skins of the tomatoes are just going to kind of peel right off. Makes it super simple. Don't squeeze them too hard, but just peel the skins off. And you'll notice the outsides of the tomatoes are pretty warm, but we are going to actually dice them. I'm going to run these under cold water just so that they stop cooking real quick. Because the boiling water will actually keep cooking the outside skin and make it mushy, but that's not what we're going for. We just wanted to use that to remove the skins, remove the peels. Now we've got some beautiful tomatoes that have no skins. Give this a stir, and then we'll start dicing our tomatoes down. We're not going to be adding our tomatoes into the pan. The reason I'm multitasking this is so that this doesn't turn into a 4-hour-long live stream. But you can 100% do this in stages. Hey, is my ratatouille done? No? All right, cool. I'll wait. All right, now it's done. Awesome. I'll get to my tomatoes. Like, you can totally do this step by step. And like I said at the beginning of the stream, you can do this the day before, or even maybe a couple days before, and then have everything ready to go, so that when you actually have that special someone come over for dinner, you can super impress them and not necessarily they won't necessarily have to see all of this prep work. It'll just be done. So in order to make tomato concasse, we're basically just going to flip these guys over. We're going to remove the seeds, just cut straight back. and pop the seeds out. You can add them to a stock. You can just toss them, whatever you want to do. You can also start from the back and move forward, and then just kind of remove the tip. And these are basically our flat pieces that we're going to get to dice down. This ensures that you don't have any extra water. We're actually going to take our ratatouille and drain it because we don't want moisture inside the tortellini. It's the quickest way to have a tortellini break open on you when you're boiling it, is to have too much moisture on the inside. So we definitely don't want the seed pods on these tomatoes. And you'll notice that I'm just focusing on the tomatoes right now, and as soon as I'm done with this stage, I'm going to flip back over to my ratatouille, give it a nice little stir. Not browning or anything, cooking down, getting soft. Looks awesome. Giving it a little shake to level it out off in the bottom of the pan. And now what I'm going to do is grab a little spoon, give this a taste. See, what does it need? Maybe a little bit of salt. Not much, just a little bit. We're not putting any herbs in this ratatouille because we're going to have an olive tapenade that's on the inside of this that's also going to kind of flavor it as well. But if you make this and decide that you want to add thyme or oregano or anything else to the ratatouille, absolutely. Remember, recipes are just a guideline. You don't have to follow them word for word. If there's something you don't like in them, for example, in our olive tapenade, I'm going to be using anchovies, but if you don't like anchovies, leave them out. Or see if you can find something, Google what can be used as a replacement. You're really not going to taste them in the tapenade. They add a little bit of saltiness. There's not much fishiness. It's more like the mouthfeel and kind of like the umami, I guess, if you want to go that route. I'm going to turn my heat down to medium instead of medium-high, just to keep everything warm. And then I'm going to go ahead and finely dice our tomatoes. What I'm going to do is cut them all horizontally first. Or at least the two that I want to work with. And then dice. Like so. Slide it to the side. And next. Same principles as what we were using with the larger vegetables. Using my knuckle as a guide and just kind of rocking through all these veggies. Now, when I pick topics to do for Cook Along Live, I always try to find things that are not going to take an overly long time to do. And sometimes that's difficult. I really don't want to do the Food Network trick of, all right, we're cooking along, this is all live, let me put this thing into the oven. Oh, and look at this, I have one already made for you. I don't want to do that. The point of this is so that people can cook in real time with me, even if I'm going a little bit faster. You guys can see that these things are very, very achievable. And the more you guys kind of play along, the faster your confidence will go up in cooking. Not to say that you're not already confident in the kitchen, but some of these things, like multi-stage things, if you're not super comfortable with them, this is a great way to watch them being done from start to finish. All right, our ratatouille is more or less done. Now what I'm going to be doing with this is I've got a clean tea towel that I'm going to use. You can use a paper towel if you want, although they tend to rip. I would recommend cheesecloth or a nice regular cloth towel. Make sure it's clean. We're going to kind of line a sieve. Get that cleared, and we're going to put our ratatouille in here to cool and also to drain any of the excess oil, any of the excess moisture. Going to come out of our filling. And we're actually going to get to squeeze this down a little bit later too. I want to make sure that it's not ripping hot before I do that. Because when moisture is hot, when water is hot, it will still burn the hell out of you. Set that over on the side, put this over the sink and let it drain. And then what I'm going to do with my tomatoes is just put them into a little bowl to wait until we're ready to drain the veggies. Now you'll notice that these tomatoes are pretty wet. I am not going to drain these guys. I'm going to put them into the vegetables after they drain, and the moisture from these will be enough to keep everything together. We're going to set everything over here on the side by the sink. And before I get too far ahead of myself, go ahead and kind of scrape off some of this goober. And I'm going to grab some basil and give it a chiffonade. Basil and spinach. And as luck would have it, we're about to blanch our spinach down so that we can use it as kind of wraps for our tortellini fillings. So basil, I said get 1 leaf. I'm actually using 2. Up to you, depends on the flavor, how much flavor you like. If you like a really subtle basil flavor, just use 1. If you like a little bit stronger, use 2, use 3, use however much you want. You get this rolled out, just kind of like a cigar, and then just rock my hands back and forth, or my hand, I should say, with the knife. Just get a really, really thin chiffonade. Let me actually switch back to this. You guys can see it from that angle. Get a nice thin chiffonade on this bad boy. And then any stems or whatever, I just toss. But the rest of this basil is ready to use. This is going to go into our tomato concasse that we just made. The tomatoes themselves should not be hot anymore. We rinsed them under some cool water, stop the cooking. They should probably be about room temperature. So you're not going to be wilting or cooking the basil at all. It's just going to be a nice little addition to that. And then we're going to mix both of these into our ratatouille once that's had a chance to cool. So I'm going to mix in my basil. While I'm doing that, I suppose I can do this. Show you all what's going on over here. So I got my basil, got my tomatoes, and we're just literally going to be mixing it through. And then all of this is going to be going into our ratatouille once that is done draining. And we're going to go ahead and give this a squeeze in just a second. We're going to be adding all of this into that. And we'll get a really nice filling for our tortellini. But for now, we're just going to set it aside and move on to blanching our spinach. Welcome back. And I spoke too soon because I need some water for this. So let's go back to the sink cam. So how's your guys' week been so far? We got Halloween coming up. Got any fun plans? For the weekend, I'm probably going to stay home, turn off my light, and pretend I'm not here because I'm taking this corona thing pretty seriously. However, I know that not everybody is, or not everybody thinks that handing out candy is a risky business. So, curious, what are y'all planning on doing over the weekend? Then how many of y'all are actually cooking along, or how many of you are just watching? Again, just kind of curious. I'm still going to be doing these cook-along lives. That's not going to make any difference as to whether I keep doing these or not, but I love it when people join in, and I've had quite a few people join in over the past couple of episodes. Set those over there. We're going to get our water here up to a boil. We're going to switch over to our top-down camera, maybe? Oh, wrong one. There we go. Perfect. We've got some spinach. Now I know that I'm making 24 tortellini, so I've got about 30 leaves in here. I want a couple just in case some of these guys split or you know, shred or whatever. But I want as many leaves as I have tortellinis at a minimum because they're going to be wrapping around our filling to kind of make these little balls. Go ahead and wipe down our cutting board just a bit. And then I'm going to retire this towel and grab another one. I'm going to take this time while we're waiting for that water to come up to a boil to catch up on the chat. Very, very difficult to keep tabs on both. Oh, and it looks like Facebook does not have a comment thing when I'm displaying it on my page. Hold on a second. Let me test this out. This is my first night streaming on my actual page. So let me say here and test. See if that pops through. Interesting. Does not look like the Facebook messages are coming through, so that's annoying. All right, I'll work on that for next one. Sorry about all the Facebook people watching. I do appreciate you guys being in on the stream. However, I did want to kind of consolidate this somewhere else just so I have a different spot for it. Let's do this. But I'll get working on that. Thank you for texting me and letting me know, Mom. I can't see any Facebook comments. Thanks, Jessica. Onion soup. You were supposed to do that like 2 weeks ago. Didn't you? Did you ever do it 2 weeks ago, Etienne? Watch The Shining on Halloween. Oh man, I've watched a bunch of stuff this Halloween. I've watched, oh God, of course, Hocus Pocus. I haven't watched Nightmare Before Christmas yet, but we've done Tremors, a bunch of different movies. I love this time of year. Horror movies are so terrible and so hilarious to me that this is like Comedy Central week for me, or month for me. So as far as salt going into our pot of water, we're going to go ahead and just do a tablespoon of salt. And that's going to season our spinach while it gets blanched. We're not going to have it in there for very long, so we want the salt to be a little bit heavy. Watch movies, ignore the public. Yep, 100%. Watching and drinking and remembering. Yep, that's on my thing. Carved pumpkins. Do you guys have pictures of those pumpkins? That would be awesome to see. Onion soup, onion tarts. I haven't made onion tarts yet. That would be something to do. Bay leaves, talk about my COVID. Mark, come on. Trying to keep this PG. I'm kidding. All right. 6-story building, 4 washing. Oof. That sounds loud. Stuffed mushrooms. Yum. Sorry, guys. I'm just scrolling through the chat. I saw it was bouncing by, and I couldn't keep an eye on it. Pierogies. Ooh, I love pierogies. All right, cool. I think I've caught up. Awesome. Hey, Mom. How's it going? Welcome to YouTube. The quality should be a little bit better over here as far as the video goes. And if you have any kind of a streaming device hooked up to your TV, you can actually stream it to your TV and watch along that way. So water's coming up to a boil, and I want this to be on, not that, I want this to be on here. There we go. Perfect. So I'm getting my water up to a boil. As soon as it comes up to a boil, we're going to throw our spinach in. We're just going to blanch it for a couple of seconds, like 40 seconds-ish, just to kind of cook it and soften it, and then we're going to pull it back out. A little sip of wine. Yum. Close that. Perfect. Awesome. Christmas is the time for ghost stories. That actually sounds like it would be kind of fun. This is one of the perils of cooking, waiting for things to just kind of heat up. And I've got the induction thing going, so can't go any faster. Absolutely, Mark. Pam is my mom. Usually my dad and stepmom are on. They're probably watching on YouTube and aren't able to chat. On Facebook and aren't able to chat. They usually watch along with me. Bunch of friends also, so yeah. And been doing this for 32 weeks. So I had a 6-month special when we got to 26, episode 26. So what, 6 episodes ago was a half a year since the pandemic started and we started having to stay at home. So we're gonna see when I get to episode 52 if we're still sheltering in place or not. And that would be probably late February of next year is about when we're going to hit that point. So we got a lot of cooking to do. Hopefully at that point we're able to go out. I'm able to have more guests over. I have had a couple of guests over from time to time, but with all of this, you know, things kind of slowing down and getting better and then things spiking again, I'm really going to start kind of limiting the amount of people who come over, basically. That's kind of how that's going to work. Water's boiling. Perfect, perfect. Got our leaves. I'm actually going to toss them in, just kind of like 3 or 4 at a time. That way they hopefully don't stick to each other as much as they usually do. But we'll see. And we just want to put these in for like 30 to 45 seconds just to blanch them. You want to be very gentle with these when we pull them out too. We want to try to keep them all in one piece. You don't want these to be folded. You don't want them to crack. We want to try and keep these guys in one piece because we're going to be wrapping our ratatouille in these. One small leaf kind of stowed away, so he gets a quick eat. Just going to let those guys go. Turn down the boil. We want it to boil, but again, we don't want the leaves to break. I want it to be more like a gentle simmer. Perfect, perfect. We'll go ahead and switch back over to the sink cam. Get these guys drained. I've got a large, overly large colander for this. Get the water dumped out. Set that in there to drain. And essentially what I'm going to do, I am going to grab some paper towels. I know Etienne's going to hate me for this. But again, just the easiest way to do this. Switch back over here. My induction is beeping at me because I moved the pan. And we'll switch back over here. I'm going to get these guys kind of spilled out onto a paper towel. Be gentle with them. Toss this back into my little draining thing. And what we want to do with these spinach leaves is take the time to open them up very gently and kind of flatten them out on the paper towel. We want the water to wick off and drain. And one thing I forgot to mention, if you are cooking along with me, you didn't already with the spinach leaves, any of the long stems that you have on these guys, you're going to want to remove them. I removed them before I tossed them into the water. The problem is if you have a stem kind of sticking out, it kind of flaps around while you're rolling these things and gets in the way and isn't ideal for keeping these guys nice and neat. I'm just going to lay these out. In one layer, and just be very gentle with them. You don't want to rip them. And they are going to kind of stick to your hands, but use that to your advantage. And again, we cooked a couple more than we needed. So if we do have 1 or 2 that rip, we have a couple of fallbacks. And if we don't need to use our fallbacks, we can get a quick taste of our handiwork. Let's go ahead and, what is that, 5, 6. So this would essentially be 1 portion here, because we're making 24 tortellini. We want 4 rows of 6. Come on, buddy. Work with me. These don't have to be bone dry when we actually start using them, but we do want to wick as much of the water away from them as we can. No, this doesn't make for great action-packed watching, but if you're cooking along live with me, or if you're cooking along live with me in the future, don't want you guys to rush this. I want you to take your time with it and just make sure you're not ripping anything. And that's another thing, like these are all available on YouTube. If you go and take a look at my playlists, I have a playlist called Cook Along Live. If you wanted to go and cook along with me while I'm watching along with the recording, you can cook along in real time and just pause it as you need to. So if I'm going a little too fast, or if you're just trying to learn knife skills or something like that, yeah, cook along with me, hit the pause button when you need to stop. you need to catch up, or if you already have a bunch of stuff done and you just need to see one or two little things towards the end, just fast forward. That's the wonder of digital media. And to anybody watching in the future, you can absolutely fast forward through this if you've already taken care of this. Unfortunately, since it's live today, we can't fast forward. I would love to. But just have to take our time. 5. And then when I actually start using these to wrap my tortellini, I'm going to prefer the bigger leaves, just because they're easier to manage when we're wrapping our filling. And that's another reason we picked a couple of extras. That way we can just use the best ones, the biggest ones, and all the smaller ones we can either eat ourselves or use for something else. Gives us options. All right, and while I'm doing this, I'm gonna see if I can catch up on chat. Did my mom teach me how to cook? No, she did teach me a lot of things. She has a really good rib recipe that I believe is from my great-grandmother. And she taught me how to cook that, and despite the fact that I do it the exact same way that she does it, I can never make it taste as good. So, sorry Mom, but I'm always gonna be coming over for ribs, because mine never taste as good as yours. I don't know why. My mom is a fantastic cook, by the way. The fact that she didn't teach me is not her fault and not my fault. I did not live anywhere near her when I was really diving into learning how to cook. I didn't go to culinary school. I literally was watching Hell's Kitchen Season 5 and watching Gordon Ramsay scream at people. And I love it when somebody is such an expert at what they do that they have all the answers. And granted, a lot of times his answers are not 100% correct. However, at the time, not knowing any better, it was an inspiration for me. And seeing all of the gourmet food that he was making really made me kind of take an interest in how to do it myself. And this was like 2005, 2006. So was that 15 years ago? That's when I really dove into cooking. Got a couple of his cookbooks, this being one of them, and really just kind of started on gourmet kind of dishes, and have just kind of gone, taken it from there is really where I've gone. So. And generally, the more, gourmet you get, the longer it takes to make it, and it's mostly all of this prep stuff. Like, we haven't even gotten to building our tortellinis yet. We're still doing the prep work in order to get there. So, again, this is all stuff that you would be doing probably the day before, getting all of these guys laid out, ready to dry, putting them in the fridge just to kind of chill overnight, and then you would be using them the following day. But that does not fit into the format that I've put together for this cook-along live. Yeah, my mom makes some really good food. Love going over there. My dad makes some really good food. My stepmom makes some really good food. She didn't used to, but she does now. She leveled herself up quite a bit. I'm super proud of her for that. My stepdad makes some really good food. Everybody in my family does pretty well. My sister and her husband make some good food as well. And it's just always been kind of a journey. It's always been, you always just do a little bit to get better, right? You can never be perfect unless you're running a Michelin-starred restaurant, which I'm not. But you can always try to get yourself to the level that you want to be. And for me, that is, for that one, so he's done. That's why we cook some egg. I did 23 of these before I tore one, so that's saying something. There we go. And I'm just gonna do this like that. And we got 24 spinach leaves ready to go for our tortellini. 6, okay, cool. So I'm just literally gonna set these aside. I'm gonna let them drain. I've got some extras here. I'm not going to worry about these extras unless I need them. Just going to set them, well, the one that I tore I'm just going to eat. No sense in doing that. All right, cool. So I'm going to actually slide this away. Now we're on to the next step. And we're going to be making an olive tapenade. And for that, we need our blender. You can use a blender, you can use a food processor, whichever one you're more comfortable with. And for the tapenade, I actually want to use my food processor, not my blender. We're going to use this for our tomato sauce, gazpacho. So let me set that on the side. We'll come over here. And this is really why this recipe is difficult. There's a lot of different elements to it. It's not so much that it's a difficult thing to do. It's just managing your time, managing the order in which to do things, managing the efficiency. Good on that. Grab our lid. Like right now, we're going to make an olive puree. So I'm going to take some Kalamata olives. We're going to toss them into the food processor, and we're just going to blitz this until these guys are pureed down. After that, we're going to make our olive tapenade, which is olives, anchovies, capers, and a thing of garlic. Now, if you were to put this in here first, your olive puree would taste like tapenade. So it's going to have all the extra flavors. So it's knowing what order to do things in so that you're not mixing flavors where you don't want to necessarily. We'll get that going, and we will just go on, off. We'll just pulse it. And we'll scrape down the sides. I know somebody's going to point out that I have some Ratatouille bits on my spatula. And I just talked about not cross-contaminating flavors. And you're absolutely right, and I don't care. Ha! And that's another thing. It's really like cooking is up to you. What do you like? What don't you like? If you don't want to cross-contaminate, you don't have to, or you don't, just don't do it. If you don't like a particular flavor of something, don't put it in. Find a replacement. If you don't eat meat, cool. Find some protein source, beans or something that'll replace it. That's what cooking is all about. Use the recipes as a guide. They are not gospel. There is no gospel in cooking. Go ahead and give that a quick spin. Get all of this stuff lined up. I don't mind it if I taste a little bit of zucchini and eggplant and stuff in my olive puree. That'll be just fine for me. Not quite. One more, and we'll have a nice puree here. So, the other reason that we're putting the olives in first and doing this instead of the tapenade first is the tapenade also has olives in it. So any olives that I don't actually scrape out from making our olive puree here, will just be part of the tapenade. So you're just being a little bit more efficient that way. All right, let's take a look. Better than Fortnite. Yes, cooking is way better than Fortnite. I have not done fried basil leaves. And Stuart, yeah, I don't know you at all. Never seen Stuart. He's one of my best friends. Julie and Jacques Pepin. Galloping Gourmet. Ooh, I have not seen that yet. Well, I am the Armenian kid in this case, so yeah, I would be doing the work. But it's all good. I like doing stuff myself. What else do we got? Labor of love, absolutely. Yes, olive tapenade with the anchovies. Again, if you don't want to use the anchovies, don't. Grab something else. Find something something else to fill the space, or you actually don't have to use the anchovies at all. I know that a lot of people use pine nuts. You can just do olives. You'll end up with less tapenade, but you can just do olives, capers, garlic. Pine nuts is popular. Herbs are popular. All right, there we go. Our puree is done. I'm going to use this small bowl. We'll get our olive puree in here. And our olive puree, until we're ready to put our tortellini together, it's just going to sit on the side. This is going to go in with the ratatouille filling. And just kind of add a little bit of extra saltiness and yumminess. And I'm not going to worry too much if I don't get all of it out. Like I said, tapenade is next, so any olives that I don't get here will get mixed into that. And I love olives. I'm an olive fiend. There we go. Just set that aside. Put that back on. Now, olive tapenade. So I've got, I think, 200 grams of Kalamata olives. You can use regular black olives if you don't like the extra saltiness of Kalamata. I love Kalamata olives, which is why I'm using them. Got about 40 grams of anchovies. You will notice that they have the bones still in them usually, but these fish are so small, there's no problem with us eating them or blending them into everything. They'll actually dissolve. They're more cartilage than anything else. And then about 20 grams of capers. And then I've got 2 tablespoons of olive oil in the bowl already. I'm just going to go ahead and pour this all out. Like so. You'll notice I didn't put the garlic in yet. And that's because I actually want to crush the garlic first. There's a couple of ways to crush the garlic. You can use a garlic crusher. I'm going to go old school. And I'm going to slice it into some thin little flats, like so. I'm going to dice it. This is a case of this taking a little bit more work up front, but me not having to clean a garlic press later, because I hate those damn things. Hate cleaning garlic presses. You never get all the garlic out. So this is a dice. And then on top of the dice, I'm going to put a little bit of salt just to kind of help grind things down. Not much. Probably a 1/4 teaspoon. And I am just going to slam down and then use the flat of the knife to crush my garlic. This will give me a really nice garlic paste. It will absolutely make everything else on my cutting board taste like garlic, which I think is okay. There we go. Go again. And I got the blade away from me. I'm putting 3 fingers or 4 fingers, I guess 3 fingers on the blade and then 1 to kind of stabilize it. And then I am just using my dominant hand to rock the knife like so and flatten the garlic into a paste. And I don't have to clean a garlic press. And then depending on how mashed up you want it, you can go a couple more times. I'm good with what I got. Now all I gotta do is rinse off my knife. And we'll get to that. We're gonna go ahead and set that on and turn it on. We'll just pulse it a couple times to get things started. Now we'll turn it on. We'll leave it on for 2 to 3 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and rinse my knife. We'll switch over to our sink cam while I do this. I'm gonna take a look at my ratatouille, which seems like it's cooled off quite a bit, which is great. Go ahead and just give our knife a nice little rinse. Get the garlic off of it. And back over. All right. Tapenade is blending away. Go ahead and take a look at it. This is much more gooey than the olive puree, which is fine. I'm just going to scrape down the sides, give it another quick go just to get anything that was not caught on the first round. Give it a little taste. Now, this stuff is super concentrated, very salty, very umami-y. We're actually going to mix it down with a little bit of olive oil later before we put it on as the dressing for our tortellini. Just gonna let this go for another 30 seconds or so. Very awesome. I'm going to go ahead and put them right back into the bowl that they came out of. Now, as far as the tapenade goes, we're not going to use all of this tonight. So if you have any kind of airtight containers, 100% put this into an airtight container. You can save it and reuse it for anything else that you want. Put it on toast, put it on other things that would benefit from it. Go ahead and scrape off that. Scrape out our food processor. And then from here, we are going to move on to our gazpacho. The gazpacho is the last element of this that we're going to make. And we're going to make a real quick salad to put on the centers of the plates. It's literally just mixed lettuce. If you want to add onions or anything else, you're more than welcome to. There we go. And then this will go right into the sink, filled with water so that none of this dries, and I'll be able to pretty quickly clean it off after we're done. Or tomorrow, as the case often is. All right, all of this in here. I'll give it one more taste. Just make sure it's got all the flavors we want. Absolutely. That is delicious. Cool. Garlicky and salty and umami-y. There we go. And I didn't switch over to the sink cam. I'm sorry, everybody. You'll have to wait for about 30 seconds while I just rinse this off real quick and come back. All right, now we're moving on to the gazpacho. So the gazpacho is where we're going to use our blender. And again, this is something that's pretty easy, but the fact that now we have to switch to another device to get it done adds to the difficulty of this recipe. So let me grab my blender here. Ooh. You know you got a good quality thing when it's heavy. Let's see. That guy plugged in. And we will move over to our tomatoes. We've just got 500 grams cherry tomatoes. This is actually one of the taller containers of the cherub tomatoes. So if you can get those where you are, just check the weight. If it's 500 grams, that's what you want. We're going to go ahead and get that blended down. Let me double check my recipe to make sure. Yep, that's all I need. I'm going to also grab, oops, let me turn off my sink. Don't want it bubbling there. Let's set this over here for now. We're going to blend these guys down into a liquid, basically. And then we're going to pour them into here. We're going to reduce them down by half. And then we're going to add some cream and some butter. And then mix it back up, blend it again. And then that's basically done. We can start forming our tortellini after we get our salad done. So I'm going to go ahead and set this up probably about halfway. We're just going to pulse it a couple times. Get things started. Then we're going to crank it all the way. Good question. I'm not sure what the cold potato soup is. I know what you're talking about, but I don't know the name of it. All right, we're going to grab my overly large sieve. Got a couple of little herbs in there that I'm going to brush out. And we're quite literally going to just pour our tomato goober into here and strain it. Just going to do a little bit for now, or like half of it. Going to give this a quick rinse, and then we're going to press it through the sieve. And what that's going to do is it's going to catch all of the seeds and the majority of the pulp. And then when we're reducing this down, we're only working with the liquid. You don't have to push too hard. You're just basically stirring, and all of the liquid will come through, but most of the pulp and all of the seeds will stay out. You're picking up all of the little impurities, all of the little particles. The finer the sieve, the better. Get the rest of this in here. Awesome. And we're going to do a little bit of plug foo as I unplug the blender and put the induction cooker back on. And then we're just going to get this kind of simmering at a low simmer. To reduce it by half. There we go. We'll put this on the induction burner. Move it up just a bit. Set this over the sink for now. And plug foo. One plug out, other plug in. We'll get this on max to get it simmering, and then we'll turn it down. While that's going, we're gonna get our salad ready. Now, I'm only making salad for myself tonight. Flying solo, as I often do. So I'm just gonna grab a little bit of these guys, just mixed greens, toss them into a little bowl. It looks like a large green. I don't want anything that big. And I'm gonna pick out and just make sure that I've got the smaller pieces and pieces that are not rotten, you know, pieces that aren't gooey or falling apart. These salad bowl things are great. The little plastic lettuce trays are awesome. However, oftentimes you'll find little pieces in here that are not stuff that you necessarily want to use. And if you find any long stems, just remove them. I usually just eat them after pinching them off. Benefits of being the chef. And I've just got some baby greens in there. That's really all I want for me. If you want to cut some onions up, put them in there. That's totally up to you. If you want to do carrot chiffonade or something as well. Actually, you know what? That sounds like a good idea. Maybe I'll do that too. Grab a carrot. Keep an eye on my sauce, which is starting to simmer, so I'm going to get that down to medium. And where is my peeler? Right here. Just going to really quickly peel skin off the carrot. Like so. These guys can go into your compost bin. And I just want to work with little bits of carrot like so. And again, just going to cut off a nice flat piece. So these bad boys aren't rolling around on me. Turn this down a bit more. Just want it at a simmer as it reduces. Looking good. And then same thing as what we did with our eggplant and zucchini. Just cut them horizontally really quick, like so. Be careful, don't cut yourself. Eat as many little pieces as you want. You are the cook. Unless you're cooking for people, then don't, because the health department will not like you. And I'm just going to chiffonade these down into small little sticks, like so. This is actually probably plenty for this little salad. I'm just going to double check any big pieces. I'm just going to go ahead and eat now. Give this a nice little toss through. And that looks like a good ratio of carrots to lettuce for me. That just means I get to eat the rest of this. And I am hungry. So, got 2 tablespoons of cream here, which we're going to go ahead and put in the blender. I'm going to go grab my spatula, scrape all of it out of the bowl. Go. And I've also got 50 grams of butter that I've got kind of already cubed, but staying cool in the fridge. I'm going to go ahead and put this in the blender as well. And you keep it cubed just so that it melts quicker. If you have a honking chunk of butter, it's not going to melt down as quick as if you have nice little cubes. And what we're going to do once our tomato sauce or tomato puree cooks down by half, we're going to go ahead and put that directly into the blender and blend it down again with the cream and the butter. Awesome, awesome. So, while we're waiting for this to do its thing, I'm going to turn it down just a bit because I don't want it boiling quite that heavily. 220 should be about right. Give it a good little stir. Like a good, nice little simmer. Viscuso is definitely not Armenian. I'll let my mom talk to you if she wants to give out any other stuff, but no, Sogomonian is Armenian. Generally, if the last name has IAN, it's Armenian, or YAN, oftentimes it's Armenian as well. We're gonna go ahead and get our dough out of the fridge. I'm not gonna open it, I'm just gonna set it here and let it kind of come back to room temperature. It's been in there for probably about an hour and a half, which is great. Maybe even a little less. Maybe like an hour and 20 minutes. We're just gonna let this sit here, kind of come back up to room temperature. Leave our salad here, leave this all set up the way that it is. We're gonna go ahead and strain out or squeeze out our ratatouille and incorporate our tomato concasse and the basil into it. So we're gonna switch over to the sink cam. And what I'm gonna do, you guys are gonna see how messy my sink is, but I'm going to angle this down. How does that look? Cool. You guys can see I've got the ratatouille here, and all I'm gonna do is pick it up like so, and we're just gonna squeeze this down. So very similar to how we kind of did it with the the dough, we're going to make a pinch point and then just start squeezing, and you're gonna notice a lot of oil is gonna come out, a lot of moisture is gonna come out, and you really want to get rid of a lot of this excess moisture, because what's going to happen is the more wet the inside of the tortellini is, the harder it is to keep them together. So we're going to go ahead and just squeeze these guys out like so. You're not going to get 100%, so don't go for like absolutely dry stuff, but you try to get as much of this out as is practical. Works a little bit better if you're using cheesecloth or muslin, but I don't have that. All I've got are these towels here. And that's pretty good. Go ahead and get this opened. A little bit drier. You'll notice that now that it's kind of tacky, or not super wet, it'll actually hold together a lot nicer than if it was like sopping wet, which is what it was when we started. Might give this just another little squeeze. You can actually just turn the other side of it to add pressure and keep squeezing the moisture out. Like so. Now, if you try to do this with a paper towel, obviously the paper towel is just going to split, and you're going to have ratatouille all over your strainer, but that's also why I'm doing it over a strainer. Just in case the cloth splits, I won't lose all of my work. Just use my towel here to kind of dry off my hand. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tomato concasse, which we can see there is moisture down at the bottom. I'm going to kind of spoon this up and in. And I want about as much tomato as I have everything else. So we've got a small little thing there. So I'm going to kind of come in here, and I'm not going to use all the tomato, but I'm going to use the stuff up on the top. The stuff that I can kind of keep from absorbing all the moisture that's down pooling at the bottom. I'm also going to try and get as much of my basil out as I can. That's it. Just like 80 to 90% of our tomato. Just kind of get this mixed together. And now what you want to do, you want to see if you can form a small little ball of our filling. This is what's going to be going into our tortellini. We're going to grab this, I'm just going to try and make a small little ball like so, and if it holds together, and you're able to kind of roll it around and play around with it without it, like, you know, falling apart, perfect. This is what we want. That's enough moisture that it's holding together. I can actually like toss it to myself, and it's flattening, sure, but it's not falling apart. It's not like, you know, splattering. That's what we want. And once we're done with our tomato, we'll actually do this first, and then we'll get our tortellinis rolled out. We're on the home stretch. We're almost there. I'm gonna leave this spoon here, kind of let that finish draining if there's any other draining that it needs to do. Take a look at our tomato puree. It has reduced by quite a bit. I'm gonna go ahead and turn that off. Pour this directly into my blender. You'll notice that it thickened up, which is perfectly fine. We're going to do this and just blend it on full high. Oh, we have to switch the power over again. All right, 3, 2, 1, go. Awesome, awesome. That looks fantastic. I'm gonna grab a bowl for that. I'll be right back. And I'll just actually use this bowl right here so we can see what's going on. We're gonna use that bowl. We're gonna grab our sieve. I'm gonna rinse it out just real quick to get any of that tomato puree out of it. Give it a quick little tap, get much of the excess moisture off of as I can. And we're going to do the exact same thing now with our puree here. I'm going to scoop out from the lid. Look at this beautiful orange color. This looks awesome. Go. Get our puree through here. You shouldn't get nearly as many bits this time because we've already pureed it twice. We've already strained it once. This is just to catch any of the stragglers. You'll notice that this has a beautiful creamy smell, obviously because we added cream and butter. This smells amazing. This is our sauce gazpacho. Try and get as much of it out of here as you can. And of course, you could save this overnight if you were making this for multiple dinners. And think about other things you could add this to after you give it a taste. Give it just a quick strain. Just make sure everything kind of comes off. There we go. This stuff is gold. And I mean that because it's delicious. Okay. Give it a quick taste. This is going to be hot. We just simmered it down, so just be careful. Oh, yeah. Add a little bit of salt. Give it some seasoning. Bring out some of those flavors. Now, the butter I used was unsalted, so I might actually have to add a little bit more salt. I like using unsalted butter just because it lets me control how much salt I want to put in there. If I want this to taste more kind of tomatoey, I would add less salt. That's good. A little bit more. Perfect. Now, if I wanted to, this is an airtight container. Like if I were doing this the night before, I would just contain this and put it in the fridge. Well, I would let it cool down to room temperature first, and then I would put it in the fridge. There we go. That is perfect. For tonight, I'm just going to set it on the side. I'm actually going to very quickly rinse this out because we are going to use this to reheat it once we're ready with our tortellini. Doesn't need to be perfect. It's just tomato going back into tomato, so it's not a big deal. And while we're doing this, we'll go ahead and grab our filling. And I'm going to put the filling in. Put it in this bowl here. Scoop out our extra tomato concasse, along with all of the moisture from it. And then we'll just, this direction, just kind of fold this out into our bowl. And there we go. There's our ratatouille filling. Nice and dry, not sopping with moisture, but it does have enough moisture to be held together, which is exactly what we're looking for. I'm just going to give this a quick taste. Perfect. Perfect, perfect. Oh my goodness. All right, we are back. Let's switch to, I guess this one is the one. I'm going to go ahead and kind of clean off my workstation. Move my dough over to the side. I don't need this anymore, so I'll set it there. Move you up to the top. Now, I have in my fridge a little sheet tray that I've actually been in there, it's been in there chilling. You don't have to do that. I've just learned that for me it works better. What I'm going to do, we're going to start making our little tortellini balls. I'm going to do that on the cutting board first and then transfer them over to the tray. You can always do it right on the drying paper towel if that's what you want to do. It makes it easier, but for me, since I want to keep it on camera, I'm going to do it over here on the actual cutting board first. So what I'm going to do, lay out one of my spinach leaves, grab some of my olive puree, not the tapenade, the olive puree. I'm going to set that down right in the middle. Now this depends on how much you like olives. If you like the flavor of olives, add a little bit more. If you don't like the flavor of olives, don't add quite as much. I'm going to use a separate spoon for the olives as I do for the actual filling. Now the filling, I want to come in and put together a small little ball about the size of a marble. I want to kind of press it together. Something like that. Now I could weigh it if I wanted to find out a shape that would be like perfect size for these, but it'll never work. You'll never find an exact measurement that works. And then all I'm going to do is kind of roll up my spinach on two sides and then kind of roll it over like so. I'll get a nice little pillow of filling. This is going to go opening side down on my sheet pan. I'm just going to do that for all of the tortellinis that I want to do. Now I'm probably just going to do 6 for now, so in the interest of moving this thing along. But I am going to keep everything else out and ready, and I'm going to finish this up later this evening. But essentially all we're doing, and you can do it in either direction, however you want to do it. You can put the ratatouille in first if you want. There's my little marble-sized ratatouille piece, and then I can just top that with a little bit of olive tapenade as well. So like so. And then I can do the same thing. Kind of roll up one side, roll up the sides, and then just turn it into a little pillow. Like so. That over. These should all be about the same size. They don't have to be perfect. There is absolutely, don't stress yourself out over these. If one's a little bit bigger, it's all good. Don't worry too much about it. Let's go ahead and finish these guys off. A little bit of olive tapenade. I am kind of flattening the olive tapenade out, I'm sorry, the olive puree, not the tapenade, out a bit on the leaf before I put the ratatouille on. Something like so. Now let me see if I can figure out how to show this to this camera. Maybe you guys can get a better angle on it. I'm taking this back piece. That way. Taking this little back piece, this back flap here, I'm pulling it over, and I'm pulling up the sides just a bit, like so, and then I'm just rolling this whole thing over and forming a little pillow, just like that. And then I'm taking the bottom part of the pillow, which has the opening, I'm setting that side down on my sheet tray. Now the reason that I am doing this first, or the reason that I had this cooling, is because we're going to put these back in the fridge, uncovered, and it's actually going to help them hold their shape a little bit. By pre-cooling this down, it'll actually kind of help the bottom part, where the opening is, hold its shape while we're working on them. We're getting a little bit of a head start on these guys. There we go. We'll do our tapenade on this one, or olive puree. Keep calling it a tapenade and it's not. Make sure you're using the olive puree and not the olive tapenade yet. The olive tapenade is for the finishing. This, I'm literally just kind of pressing it together to make a little ball filling. You'll notice your little chiffonade basil. You should have a little bit of basil in each one. Don't stress out if you don't, but that's the intention, and that's why I use 2 basils instead of just the 1 basil. I was finding that if I only used 1 basil, it kind of disappeared into the mix. I wasn't sure that I was getting enough basil, so I'm just going to pull the back up and over, tuck in the sides, and just continue to roll it like so into a little pillow, and move the little pillow over to our sheet tray. So, everything that we've been doing up until this point can be done the day before. And this is, I would recommend, unless you have a day to do this, that's what you do. The day before, get everything prepped. It's going to take about, we're working on this for 2 hours now, about 2 hours. And then the day of, you'll only have about 30 minutes of work put into it. Probably gonna be about 2.5 hours of the prep time and about 30 minutes of actual work. Same thing, we're just gonna set that there. We're just gonna roll it up, roll the sides around, turn it into a little pillow. Put the opening side down, like so. The last one for this. Then I'll get these guys in the fridge and we'll move on to our pasta. Bit of our olive puree. Middle. Bit of our ratatouille filling. Form it into a little ball. Doesn't have a basil, so I'll grab a little strip of basil. That. Set it on top. Same thing. Roll it back over. Roll the sides up. Turn this into a little pillow of delicious, yummy. And just get it down on the tea tray. So all of these guys are going to go uncovered in the fridge. Now, if you're doing this for everybody, you're going to make all 24. I would rather not waste your time tonight, but let me know if that's something you would rather I do, because I'm here to make you all happy. Here we are. Now we can start kind of moving these things out of the way to clean later. There we are. And this out of the way. I'm going to keep my knife out. And we're going to go back to working with pasta. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually clear off my cutting board area. Move the cutting board out of the way. We'll wash that later. We're going to roll out our tortellini. Whoop. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a real quick spray down, since we're going to be working with food on it. And I'm going to use this tomato stained one that we were using earlier, because it is still more or less clean, but it's just got tomatoes all over one side of it. Give this a nice little wipe down. We're going to set up our pasta roller. You can 100% do this with a rolling pin if you would like. You are a better person than I am if that's what you're doing, because I am not going to use a rolling pin. I'm going to use a pasta roller. So I also have a nice little space over here where I have room kind of clamp mine down on the countertop like so. You'll notice that I've already got this thing pretty well floured. And that's so that the pasta doesn't stick to it. Now what I'm going to do is grab a bag of flour. I'm going to go ahead and get a nice little dusting down on my countertop here, like so. And just set that over on the side because I might need some more. We're going to pull out our dough. I'm going to go ahead and unwrap it. It's had a little bit of time to kind of come up to room temperature again from the fridge. And I'm not going to immediately put it down. I'm going to use half of this because remember, this is a double size. This is a double serving of dough. So you'll notice that it's a lot more malleable. It's a lot softer now. Also come back up to room temperature. You can fold it and form it a little bit better. This is straight out of what we did this morning or this afternoon. I want half of this. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to put it a little bit outside of the flour. Just cut it in half. Like so. The half that I'm not using, I'm going to put right back in and get it all nice and folded back up again. This can stay in the fridge for a couple of days, 2 to 3 days. The longer you keep in the fridge, the more it's going to discolor. It'll actually start turning kind of like a grayish color. You can freeze dough and then thaw it out and use it in the future. I've never done it, so I'm not 100% sure how you would go about doing that, but I do know that you can. So if that's something you want to do, maybe you're not going to make pasta tomorrow or the day after, go ahead and Google, how do you store flour in the freezer? Or dough in the freezer. I'm going to go ahead and put this right back in the fridge, right next to our tray of filling. Now I'm going to grab this bad boy, flatten him out a bit, and just kind of start very lightly kneading him out, nice and flat. Now the reason I'm trying to get him nice and flat is because this has a widest setting, but you have to get it down to that size before you start rolling it out. So that's essentially what I'm doing. Just flattening it out. The flour, just make sure that it's not sticking to the surface. I'm just using the palm of my hand, kind of flatten it. Once I get it to about this size, I don't know, 12 inches by 6 or 12 by 12 or whatever, I'm gonna go ahead and cut it in half. And what I'm going to do is actually cover the half that I'm not working with right now with a towel, preferably a damp towel, and that's so that it doesn't dry out. You really don't want this to form a skin on the outside because then it just doesn't quite roll the same way. It doesn't work as well. I'm going to go ahead and actually cut this into 4, and those are going to be our servings. So since I'm only working with 1 serving right now, I'm just going to keep the rest of it covered, and we'll go ahead and start rolling out this one. Perfect. So same thing, I'm going to try and kind of form this into a square and flatten it out. And now that I have time to kind of look up, I'm going to take a look at the chat. Polish puffed pastry. How old am I? I am 38 years old. I will be 39 in May of next year. Go to Alla Turca on Giri. Okay, absolutely. Will do. Poland and Ukraine. Awesome, awesome. Very cool. Good. Peeling apples. No, I wasn't peeling apples. What else was I doing? Was it a carrot? I don't know what I was doing. Merchant gave me a gift, rum flavored with pumpkin and spices. I do not know Kristiki? No, I don't know that. Polish puff pastry. Sounds amazing though. And I do know coq au vin. I have not made that, although I 100% could. I've done it before, just not on this channel. That would actually be a great suggestion because it takes about an hour. All right, so we got this nice and kind of flattened out, and it's still nice, soft, and malleable. It hasn't formed a skin on it yet. We're gonna go ahead and just put it in. This is on the widest setting, so the gap is as wide as it can go. And we're just going to roll it through. Like so. Get my knife out of the way. I'm gonna go down to the next lowest setting, change the direction, and get this guy through again. Any extra flour, I'm gonna go ahead and kind of dust off. I do want a nice light layer here where I'm rolling. I basically just want to do 1 trip through at each setting until I get it down to the thickness that I want. Down to 4. There we go. You'll notice that as this goes through the thickness settings, it is getting longer. It's also getting a little bit wider. So you just got to kind of keep an eye on it. Down to 5. When the dough is very dry and not sticky at all, down to 6. And we basically want to go down to a thinness where you can just barely see your like your hand through it. You can just barely tell that you have fingers on the other side. There we go. I'm gonna go down to 7. I think that'll be perfect. Now the thinner you go, obviously, the more difficult it is to keep these things together when you are boiling them. But now you can almost, I don't know if you guys can see it. Oh, well, you can't see it on the cam because it's not that way. But you can actually see the pattern of the granite through the pasta. So you guys should be able to see that. As I'm moving this around, you see the pattern underneath it. That's what you want. That's how thin you want your pasta to be, so that you're able to kind of see what's going on the other side of it. Now we're good. So you were asking earlier if my fingers were super small because we're making tortellini, and the answer is no. What I'm going to be doing is I'm actually going to be using a 3-inch round cutting thing, which should be right here, and it has disappeared. Where did it go? Where did you come from? Where did you go? Found it. So this is about 3.5 inches wide, and I'm going to be using this to cut rounds. Now, you don't have to use this. If you don't have a cookie cutter that's a circle, you don't have a round, you absolutely can measure about 3 inches wide by 3 inches tall and just cut your squares. It's going to work out the exact same, slightly different. And I'll show you both methods. For this one here, we're just going to come down as close to the edge as we can. And we're just going to, quite literally, cut out our round. And there is one of our tortellinis. Now, if you're going to be going for something that's a little bit more square, you should use a ruler. You should use something so that you know what the size is that you're going for, because you do want these to be uniform. And you're just going to cut your straight edge that way and cut your straight edge this way. And I'm also going to trim off this edge. And here is a round tortellini versus a square tortellini. So if you don't already have a circle cutter, you don't need one. Go ahead and just cut a square that's about 3.5 by 3.5. I'm going to continue with square. With round, just because that's what I'm used to. But I'm going to show you how to fold both of them. I'm going to come in here. All good. There's 2. I'm going to come up here. We'll get 3. And again, we're going for 6 per person. There's 3. Slide this down a bit. And you probably have more than enough dough for it. There's 4. And if you want to make bigger tortellini, just use a bigger cutter. You'll also have to make your fillings a little bit bigger as well. There's 4. Here's 5. So I could 100% have made 7 per person, and I think I have enough filling to be able to do that as well. Here's 5, and here's 6. But there we go. So, homemade dough, homemade tortellini. This is all extra. You can absolutely cut it into other shapes or do whatever you want with it. It's pretty disposable, so I'm probably just going to chop it up into nice little straight edges and cook it like tagliatelle or something like that. But here we go. Our tortellinis, our rounds are done for one person. This is our serving. Six tortellini, and then we've got our square one over here that we're also going to use. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get this filled with water and boiling. Give me just a second here. One of the problems of doing it live is you don't have time to go back and edit when you forget to actually clean out your pan or pot because you didn't remember that you were going to be using it. So 2 seconds here while I get this rinsed and filled up with some more water. We're going to get this boiling and we're going to season it really nicely for our tortellini. There we go. Make sure that our burner is plugged in. And on. On high. Go ahead and get our salt in there. Season the water pretty generously. Remember, not all the salt that you put in the water is going to get absorbed by the tortellini, but you do want them to absorb some of that flavor while they're in there. Otherwise, the outside will be kind of bland, and the inside will be flavorful, but the blandness of the outside is the first thing that's going to hit your tongue. Not ideal. We're going to take out our little rounds, our little pillows, and we're going to start building our tortellini. So what I want to do is grab a little brush and a little bowl with some water in it. Now, if you really want, you can make an egg wash, which is 1 egg yolk and 2 tablespoons of water. Regular water works just as good. So, let me double check and make sure I haven't missed anything. All good, all good, all good. All good. Perfect. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab our little balls here of our what do we want to do there? There we go. Grab our little balls of ratatouille, and we're going to put one right to one side, just to one side. So center line is like right here. We're going to put it just a little bit to one side. A little bit of water on our brush, or you can use your finger if you want. You don't want a lot of water, just enough to make it sticky. And we're going to brush away from the center. And you just want to get a half of the tortellini. Like so. And we're going to fold over. And the first thing we're going to do is pinch the top together. Like that. And then what we want to do is we want to pinch around, lining up the edges and then pinching down to crimp it down. And you want to make sure that you're squeezing as much air out as you possibly can as you're going around. So here we go. And one tortellini is done and folded. If you have any extra air, try and squeeze it out at the bottom. Like so. Now we're going to pick up our tortellini, and we're going to basically, using your finger, put it flat against your finger like so, roll it up with your thumb so that now you have the lip at the back. Take this corner, fold it over, take this corner, fold it over, and then pinch it against your nail, like that. Then you can remove your thumb, and you've got one little tortellini pillow here. Now, you're going to have double thickness pasta around here, but you have single thickness pasta where the filling is. What you're going to want to do is go around and just crimp all of this pasta down so that it's about the same thickness. You want it all to be about one sheet of thickness. And then the same thing with this little arm piece that we kind of pinched together. Make sure you pinch that together, and then you can kind of sit it up like so, and then just set it down on your tray. One tortellini done. Now, if you're doing a square tortellini, we're going to do this in a diamond shape like so. We're going to go ahead and do the same thing with our center. Put it in just a little bit to the one side. And then again, your little brush, a little bit of water. Just brush half of it, brush away. You don't want so much water that if you if you squeeze the two ends together, you have water squirting out. You just want to kind of moisten it so that it sticks together. Like so. We're going to take this tip, this point, match it with this point, do the same thing, squish it back, and then we're just going to laminate the same way, all the way down. Squeeze out as much air as you can while you're pushing it together, and then squish out like this. And here's our square tortellini done. And then the same thing, go around, give it a nice squish, make sure that you're getting a single sheet of thickness here for your pasta. Make sure you don't have any large air bubbles. If you do, try and pinch them away. And then the exact same thing. Use your thumb, roll it back so that you get that little lip up here. And then take this side, fold it over, take this side, fold it over, pinch them together. And you've got a square tortellini that you can set over there. So either way, whatever your poison is, whichever one works best for you. I'm glad that you're down with the thickness too. That's awesome. That's awesome. And we're just going to continue with all of our tortellini. Go ahead and set that there. A little bit of water, a little bit of moisture. And then we're going to fold it exact same way. Pinch down the edges, pinch backwards. Now you can even get these tortellini filled and crimped the night before, and then just let them rest covered in the fridge. And then the day of, when you're actually doing cooking, you just pull the tortellini out. Although it is kind of a fun thing to do if you have somebody coming over, to have them help you kind of make tortellini, especially if there's somebody who appreciates food. If you've got all the filling and everything ready for them, they'll probably have a lot of fun pressing out tortellini with you. There we go, same thing. Use your finger, pinch it back. Over on your thumb, same thing with the other side. Over and onto your thumb. And then just pinch it down. And crimp it together. One thickness of pasta. And then just make sure that the rim is the same. I got 2 tortellini, 3 tortellini. Our water's boiling. We're going to turn it down to medium-high. I don't need it rolling. Go ahead and just finish up our tortellini. You can use a finger if you want. Just kind of brush with your finger. Again, you don't want a lot of water down here. You just want enough to get it moist. I'll just roll this over. And I switched to a dry finger to push down on the other side so that the tortellini doesn't stick to my finger. And same thing, squeeze out all the air, and then just crimp it out. And then here we go. Pick it up. I used a little bit too much water, and now what's happening is that the sides don't want to stay crimped together because I made them slick instead of sticky. So keep an eye on that. Make sure that you don't use too much water. It's not a good thing if you do. Roll it up. Push our sides together. And there we go. Actually concerned that this one might split in the water. Instead of using my brush like I should have, I used my finger. But we will see. We're going to do it live. There we go. 4 tortellini. Number 5. Now if you have all of these rounds done beforehand, what you're going to want to do is make sure that you cover them. Right now mine are starting to get that like skin on the outside that's going to make them hard to work with. I'm moving quick enough that I think I'm going to be okay. Let's try this again. Very lightly with water on this side. Very lightly. Otherwise I'll just switch back to the brush. But if you're doing all 4 servings at once, make sure that you have the rounds that you've cut covered so that they don't dry out. Because when they dry out, they'll actually crack instead of folding. And that's not a good look. Doesn't make things any easier for you. I think I'm just going to go back to using my brush. There we go. Get this fold it over, crimp it together. And there we go. There's 4, last one. Grab this guy. Where'd my brush go? Over here. A little bit of water. Give this guy a good little brush. A little bit more. Fold it over. Crimp, 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 crimp. And crimp this all the way over. There we go. Fold it up. Fold it over on this side. Crimp the side on your thumb. And just make sure the whole thing is nice and sealed. Now there are a couple of different ways to do this. You can kind of parboil them if you want. You throw them in the water real quick. You let them blanch for about 2 minutes. You take them out, then you can cool them. And then you can just redo it, reheat them when you're ready to serve them. Or you can just cook them all the way. So like for me, I'm just going to go ahead and put these guys in. They're only going to take a couple of minutes, so like 3 to 4 minutes. And we'll pull them out. And we'll have beautiful home-cooked pasta. So while I'm waiting on that, I'm actually going to grab my serving dish. We're going to get our salad plated up in the middle, like so. And then what we're going to do is just dot the outside of this plate with the tortellini as they come out. A couple more carrots on this. Let's grab this piece, nice and cooked. Beautiful piece of cooked pasta. We'll go ahead and put our tortellini in and see if they break open or not. Here's 1, 2, 3. 4, 5. And 6. Hey Siri, set a timer for 2 minutes. Guess I wanted to say 4 minutes. That is delicious. All right. So, my tomato puree, or my tomato gazpacho, is actually still pretty warm. So what I'm going to do is get my water to a simmer instead of a rolling boil. Just going to lightly coat my spoon. Just kind of draw around the plate, like so. And we're absolutely going to add more of this. This is just kind of a base. Make this look kind of fun. Leave that spoon there. We're going to take our olive tapenade. And what we're going to do with the tapenade is we're actually going to take a spoonful of tapenade. Helps the medicine go down. Like so. And we're going to mix that with an equal part of olive oil. Just regular olive oil. You don't need extra virgin or anything. Should be about a tablespoon of each. We're going to go ahead and get that mixed together. And what this is going to do is kind of thin the tapenade out a bit. And you absolutely can use that extra virgin if you want. I'm just not tonight. We're going to do the same thing with this as we did with our... Hey Siri, stop the timer. Hey Siri, set a timer for 2 minutes. We're just going to kind of give this a little bit of a swirl like so. And we'll go this way, kind of through our tomato. And we'll come around the outside of this a little bit more. Again, this is just kind of a base. We're going to go ahead and add some of this to our tortellinis as well once we're done. That looks pretty. Do a little bit outside here. There we go. Hey Mark, nice to see you. It was a pleasure having you. Thanks for being such a great conversationalist. Sorry that this was a little bit more of an in-depth cook-along than I normally do, so I wasn't able to kind of look up and take a, keep an eye on the chat very, very well. But cheers to you, my friend. I hope you give this a try at some point. All right, there we go. Sip of wine. Oh, not at all, Mark. You've been good. Always good to get somebody in here who has a good conversation. All right, almost done with our tortellini here. Hey Siri, how much time is left on the timer? 30 seconds. Good enough for government work. I'm gonna go ahead and pop these guys out. Grab that last one. Come here, buddy. There we go. Let them drain. None of them broke open, which is great. They are hot. Hey Siri, stop the timer. And then what we're going to do is just kind of dot them around the outside of the plate here. I'm going to put them right on top of our nice design that we've put together. Like so. We've got a delicious tortellini of ratatouille with sauce gazpacho done. Last bit, if you really want to, come in and just drizzle some of your sauce right into the tortellinis themselves. Just kind of clean up the outside a bit. Perfect. And of course, got to clean up the plate because the better something looks, the better something tastes. And there we go. Now let me see if this works. Not that one. Let's do this one. Got a delicious plate, tortellini ratatouille with sauce gazpacho, and I will also do that, show you what it looks like from the top. Absolutely delicious. Now you can add some dressing to your salad if you want. I'm just going to go ahead and eat it the way that it is. And what did I come over here for? I want to grab my Instagram photo before I dig in. do this, and we'll come over to camera, portrait. And we'll do that. Perfect. I'll grab our fork. We'll go ahead and dig in. So, let me grab a knife as well. We'll just cut one of these bad boys open. Go ahead and clear. We got some nice cooked pasta. Got a good bit of filling inside of each tortellini. It's all ratatouille, very, very delicious. Don't know if you guys can see it very well up on the upper camera there, but there you go. And absolutely delicious. This is so good. The gazpacho really, really complements the ratatouille. And in fact, if you're making a ratatouille, usually you put some of the gazpacho down in the bottom of the pan when you're actually roasting it, and so it helps flavor. This way you're using it as kind of a sauce, and also with the olive tapenade, which I actually want a little bit more of here. Put a couple of little dollops of that on each tortellini as well. That is delicious. And this is a dinner fit for a king, queen, or non-identified leadership type. Oh man, that is good. I really hope you guys give this a try. It took a long time, 2 hours and 2.5 hours basically to put this together in one night, and just for one person. Take the time, take the 2.5 hours the day before, get all the prep work done, put them together, and cook them the next day. It'll take you like 30 minutes to do it for 4 people. And this is an incredible dinner. If you're celebrating something or just want to show off for somebody, this is great. I hope you guys give it a try. If you haven't already, like my page on YouTube, subscribe if you haven't, and you can find me on Facebook. Now I have a page for this setup at the same username that I have everywhere else. So you can go ahead and like that, follow me there, and hope to see you on the next Cook Along Live next week. Sunday night, 4:30, and follow me on Instagram if you want to see the ingredients lists the week before. Have a great night, everybody. Happy Halloween. I will see you on November 1st. Bye.